Welcome to The Daily Show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And congratulations on what I can only assume must feel like a whirlwind ride.
It has been quite the ride indeed.
You've been an artist for a very long time, but you can't deny getting to create the official portrait for the first black president of the United States was one of the highlights of your life, I'm assuming.
I'm assuming it's probably going to be on my tombstone. I have to say that being the first African-American artist to paint the portrait of the first African-American president is quite the honor as well.
I can imagine.
And then the question is, how do you make that something that is vibrant? How do you make painting alive in the 21st century?
Right.
Those are big challenges.
There must be a lot of pressure that comes with painting those portraits as well, because it's not just a portrait for Obama. That's a portrait that's supposed to live throughout time.
That's right. That's right. In fact, what you have is a situation where it's like no pressure or anything, but this is history. And what we wanted was something that played into all the rules around dignity and respect and power.
Right.
But also a portrait that communicated who Obama is. You know, he really wanted a portrait that didn't have all that sort of pomp and circumstance. If you look at the portrait closely, he's leaning in towards the viewer. He's dressed rather casually for a presidential portrait. And there's a bunch of flowers and leaves behind him.
Right, there are a bunch, yes. Which people had never seen before in a portrait. I remember when it came out, there were a lot of people making jokes where they're like, we've never seen this many leaves. And it felt less like it was just about the subject and more about the subject in the world they were in, more than ever before.
Certainly. And the memes were everywhere. I remember seeing Bart Simpson coming out of the
Oh,
leaves.
the Homer Simpson in the bushes?
That's right. But what few people don't realize is that those flowers are telling a story about his life. So there are flowers from Kenya, there are flowers from Indonesia, there's the state flower of Hawaii. And so it really charts his life globally as a means of saying this man is at once very American, but engaging in a global conversation.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That is really beautiful. What did he say when he saw the portraits?
I think, Jesus, I can't quite remember because we were all on stage. The first time he saw the portrait was that moment where we were pulling down.
That's a lot of pressure.
Oh my God.
No, I mean, I would show it to him beforehand and be like, what do you, because I mean, what if you pull down the thing and then he's like, Weren't you stressed at that moment?
I was stressed more than you can imagine, but when I get stressed, I kind of pretend to be very composed. My hands are shaking, everything's sort of moving in slow motion, and I just sat there and took it all in.
And since then, you have been on a journey that has really been beautiful to watch because, you know, people have noticed your art, and your art is art that I feel needs to be noticed because you do something that's really interesting. You know, you create art that we're familiar with in an unfamiliar way. One of the more interesting pieces that you created was Rumors of War. Now, I hope some people saw it when it was in New York City, right? And it's a beautiful, statue it's a Confederate statue in its style, and yet you come up close and you see this young black man who's wearing Jordans, and he's got jeans on, and he's got a hoodie, and he's riding this horse in a way that we associate with Confederate statues. What was the symbolism, and why did you choose to create that piece?
Right. Confederate sculptures have been haunting and terrorizing Americans for, a good 50, 60 years now. Most people think these things go back to slavery. They don't. They actually go back to as late as the 1930s and 50s.
Wow.
These sculptures were designed to remind African Americans of their place in society. And they're still in major parts of the South. I went to Richmond on a trip and I saw one of these sculptures and I said, you know what, this is a language that's powerful.
Right.
And it's one that I want to be able to use, to sort of inhabit it, to haunt it. And so I found several African American men, merged all of their features, created this kind of everyman on a horse, and recreated those monuments for the 21st century to create sort of a new way of saying yes to people who happen to look like me.
It is really beautiful in how it does that, because I remember going to Times Square when it was here, because it's now moved to Virginia.
Right.
But I remember standing there and I was shocked at how many people were coming up and just pointing. Little kids were going like, look, that hair, it's got dreadlocks like me, and it's got this. And it really was a touching moment that people take for granted, where people saw art that represented themselves, which some haven't seen for a very long time.
Yeah, that's the power of art. We all go to museums and we all feel inspired by these images of dignity and grace And it means something when young African Americans, kids, can go into a museum and see someone who looks like themselves. It gives a sense of, I belong to the conversation around power.
Right.
Who has it? Who's allowed to inherit that dignity?
You have a piece that is now going to be on display, and this is really interesting. It's called Napoleon Leading the Army Over the Alps.
Yeah.
And that piece is really gorgeous because it was designed to mimic the original Napoleon piece. Right? But again, you've changed it to be something different, and it's going to be hanging up right next to the Napoleon piece in Brooklyn.
It is a bizarre situation where we're actually dealing with a historical conversation. I'm borrowing the same pose from a painting that was made by David during the time of Napoleon, and now I've got a young black man in jeans. Excuse me, he's wearing camouflage.
Right.
And Tim's, and he's embodying that sense of Brooklyn bravado, but within the language of great European paintings. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to do was to be able to have the original historical object and my object in the same room, and the Brooklyn Museum said yes. So now we have an opportunity for the first time to have this temporal shift, this rift, this ability to look at not just some guy who's playing with history, but the object from the past in the same room. It's a great honor.
One thing you've been commended for, and it really is special to see, is how you portray women in your art as well. You have beautiful portraits of women, black women who have natural hair, but they're in regal positions that we associate with, like the British Empire, monarchies wearing armor. You have women who, it's pictures that we associate with masters, as opposed to those that have been enslaved. And these women are grand in a very different way than we're used to seeing. Why do you choose to do that? What is the purpose behind that?
Well, artists paint what they're familiar with. I paint what I've known, and what I've known are powerful black women who've given me a sense of self-worth, a sense of dignity, and that is what you see mirrored in my work. And sure, there's a little bit of play that goes on. There's a play with like how silly the clothing looked back in 500 years ago.
Right.
The same thing's going to happen now. I mean, the contemporary clothes that the women wear in my paintings is going to start looking really silly, just like those silly neck things that are in all those old Dutch paintings.
Oh yes, those things. I think they would have catch breadcrumbs or something. Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Well, you can imagine that in 300 years, this stuff decays.
It's just going to become a blend in time, I feel like.
Well, we all decay, we all leave this earth, but these paintings will be here for centuries. And what I want to be able to do is to say yes to people who look like me, yes to moments of grace and small things that we oftentimes ignore, and to make us all feel as though we were there for something that mattered.
I think you do an amazing job of that. Thank you so much for being on the show. Kehinde's exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum opens January 24th, and his show in London opens February 21st. Kehinde Wiley, everybody.